didn't really have a schedule. Oh, here we go. We're live.
All right.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. Today we're speaking with Timothy Brainard, and he is our portal guardian for the Inventor archetype, and that is in association with Gate 24, Gene Key 24, Hexagram 24. They're all the same, really. So, hi, Tim, and welcome.
Hi.
How about you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you kind of got started with Gene Keys, human design, how you resonate with the Inventor archetype, wherever you'd like to go.
Okay.
Oh, hi, Bella.
Hi, Bella.
Oh, we can't hear you. Are you using your Yeti?
It says you're muted.
Now she's muted.
My Yeti's not working on StreamYard. I don't know why, but I'm in another room. I'm in StreamYard on the schedule thing at 1.
I accidentally sent you Simone's. We're live right now, by the way. Say hi.
Let's turn off the other one.
Okay. Yeah, because I sent you guys the other one first. So I did share it to a couple groups, but that was like a while ago, so I don't know if it's going to show up in the feed. So anyways, I just introduced Tim, and Tim is about to tell us a little bit about himself. So whenever you're ready to dive in.
Okay, I'm ready. I just wanted to make sure we were all settled. So I've been giving this particular conversation quite a lot of thought. This 24th gate, 24th gene key, it's the most interesting to me because it has been the most challenging to connect with on a personal level. And that's saying something. You asked about my history, and it's been over 8 years now that I've been studying, just completely immersed in human design. And it's been going on 3 years since I first met the gene keys. It's a lot of time. And it's a lot of time to be specifically contemplating a particular element of a chart or a particular aspect of myself, and to still be scratching my head over it. It feels like you get this idea, especially when you're studying material, that our idea of education is such that you think you should be able to understand something, gain knowledge about something. And my experience of this energy is that it is pernicious and tricky. And so I wanted to say at the outset that there's no part of me that's coming to this conversation as an expert. Quite the opposite. In fact, I'm showing up today excited to talk with you two, but as a student, okay? And I'm happy to share what my experiences have been with this energy, but man, it's still like a primary area of discovery for me. So there's that. And then there was something else that I really wanted to feel into as well. So there was like the disclaimer, which is I'm no expert here. And there's a commitment too. Moving into this conversation, I thought, if we're going to do this, then I'm going to have to open myself up in this conversation in a way that's kind of vulnerable. And so the commitment is that I'm going to be honest and speak from my own experience. But there's no part of me that's hoping that anyone will take what I say as the truth. The invitation is to hopefully receive my experience in a way that opens you to your own. Okay, so there's a beginning. There's a beginning. I have a lot of history in both human design and the gene keys, but what we're looking at today is still very alive.
Yeah, and you actually have to give people a reference to how he has experience with it. I'll just show the chart briefly. This is Tim's chart. He has 24.2 in his life's work. This is also the conscious sun, so it is an important part of anyone's chart. And it is your birthday tomorrow, or it's the day after tomorrow?
Day after tomorrow. Wow, that snuck up on me.
It is here.
Yeah.
So in it, and it's his pearl as well. So he's got it in two very important parts of his chart. I'd love to hear kind of, can you connect into this? Is this a little bit more elusive? What does it mean to have it in your life's work and your pearl? What has like kind of dawned on you with it being in these spots? in your design?
Okay, let's go into this. I'd love to begin by sharing my very first ever experience with this 24 energy. Okay, and it was actually not related to the gene keys. It was a part of my study in human design and the I Ching, and so I was kind of on these two tracks simultaneously when I first met this story of the 24. And within these contexts, the name of this human design gate is the gate of the return or returning. And the energy speaks to this repetitive cycle, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember the day that I met this because it connected a dot for me in my own experience. You know, prior to that point, I had always described myself as someone who is very OCD. and of course, obsessive compulsive disorder is something with many facets, and two people with OCD will express that particular tendency in a different way. My way was described to me one time by a neurologist, and he told me to imagine that there was a synapse going across my head, and that my brain was trying to get a thought from here to here. And so it would fire the thought from one side to the other, and it would go all excited. It would get about halfway and then hit this like break in the synapse and then just recycle. And so I would run these repetitive loops like a broken record. And when he described this to me at the time, it really connected for me because that's always happened. You know, I've always been stuck in these repetitive thought loops, and sometimes it's no big deal. For instance, I have Christmas songs playing in my head all the time. I don't know what the deal is, but it's Christmas songs all year round except for Christmas. So there's some weird stuff going on up there, you know? It's just like, and so you'll catch me like whistling and humming Christmas songs because it's just like on constant replay. No big deal. It becomes a big deal when the thought pattern that's trying to move is crummy or self-critical, mm-hmm. or guilty. And so this is where I've become really stuck in the past. And so meeting this 24, something about it wasn't only that it revealed a part of me, it was that it permitted a part of me. It said, this thing that's happening, it's not alien. It's not some kind of like attack. You're not a victim to this energy. There's something happening here, and it's a part of who you are. And so it was like something inside of me settled a bit. I didn't have understanding yet, but I'll tell you one thing. When I had previously met this energy through neurologists and through the lens of other people in my life, the answer was medication. Well, you have OCD, therefore you should consider ... And I've always said, no, I'm not going to do this. I won't put the chemicals in my body to control a process. I should be able to understand what's happening here and find a way to make it useful. And so to meet this information in that way for me was a really big deal, because it told me that although my experience of it had been on a darker side of a coin, there should be a flip side to that coin that allowed me to make use of this process. And so that's what has led me into my personal contemplation of the 24. How can I allow for this repetitious, oftentimes uncomfortable, broken record process? How can I make something useful of this? And the gene keys are what have allowed me to really lean into the answer to that question. Because what I learned that this 24 is in fact a process. It's not only an energy, it holds in that energy a process, and the process is one that works for us. So this repetitious cycle is one that we can get inside of, and amazingly, it is the process of contemplation, which is the very core requirement of making any beneficial use of the gene keys. So when I recognized that for the first time in my life, I was able to connect an aspect of genius to this part of myself, which I had only ever been at odds with. So I'll pause there for a minute. I want to see if you can really sense into the significance of that. Is that coming across?
For sure. Bella, would you like to I see you shaking your head a lot. I was like, I wonder if she has anything to ask or add.
I find it interesting that in the gene keys, when we look at the profile, what we have been speaking about this week, Ashley, is that pathway of individuation that goes from the purpose to the life's work. And we have been focusing on that and saying that is the expression of the human being, and that the purpose, the attraction, and the SQ come from the design side. It comes from the soul side. So it's kind of, it was underpins our expression in the world. And then from the personality side, we take Jupiter and we take the sun, and we stuck them on these other three. So if we look at that from purpose to life work right through the chart. And if I would look at Tim's human design, I would say, okay, 24 is his personality sign. Cool. But I wouldn't necessarily go and look where Jupiter is and be like, oh, that's so interesting. They go together.
Mm-hmm.
So really, when I look at the geometry of the genetic profile, that I'm like, okay, this is the outer expression. It's underpinned by what's under there, the 22, the 61, the 33. But really, the outside expression, when the soul has come into alignment, is going to be twice the 24. And it's also interesting because both the second line and the fifth line have this projection feel to it. So there's also some resonance by having the middle line in the first trigram, the middle line in the second trigram in the expression of it, knowing as well that the Tim is a 2-5. So I find it very, like, I can understand why the experience with the gene keys, not only for the sake of contemplation as the way the medium we use, but also how it looks in the chart, how it's so powerful that we have the pearl in the life's work that are that 24.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's a really, really astute observation, and it's an observation that has only just begun to kind of crystallize in me as one that's not only meaningful but is taking on a new life. You know, when I saw it, anytime I see multiple activations like this on a chart, it's an exclamation point for me. You know, I never recognize a specific relevance, but I know that there's something there, that there's extra relevance there. And so I've seen this in my own chart, and it's always been like this crossed arm kind of a you know, like, how come is it that this most primary aspect of the story here is so veiled to me? And what I've found is actually was something that was revealed to me through the Gene Keys, which deals with this shadow of addiction. And I remember the first time that I ever read about this in the Gene Keys book, there was, you know, maybe a sentence or two that kind of, it wasn't even explicit. It was like it pointed to this idea that what makes an addiction so impossible is the fact that we're blind to it. We're dealing with a habitual pattern, not only a habitual thought pattern, but a habitual behavior pattern. So these are just ways that we move through life. We don't think about them. It just happens. It seems to just happen. And so we continually find ourselves victimized by these decisions that seem to make themselves. And so in reading about this at the time, I recognized it, but it wasn't yet enough to show me the addictive patterns. In fact, it was years before I was able to personally connect with the idea that I was an addictive person at all, that there were like any addictive tendencies in there. I looked at the superficial explanation of addiction and what we generally understand, and I'm like, no, there's really nothing like that. It's only in the past maybe 9 months or so that things have really begun to become more clear for me. And oh man, first of all, that's not so fun. But to see oneself with such clarity and honesty, I think the reason that we don't for so long is because on some subconscious level, we're terrified to see the truth in ourselves so clearly. A great part of my more recent process has kind of, it feels somewhat forcefully opened me to, a vision of myself that I have never really been prepared to access. And so when I look at addiction now, I can tell you that, and here's part where we become a little bit vulnerable, okay? I can tell you that I have been addicted to being seen and recognized by others. You can get a sense, if you're at all familiar with human design, how deep those roots go when you consider the fact that I'm a projector. So it's not just nice when I feel seen. It's something that's rooted in my DNA. It's a need, right? On a genetic level, it's experienced as a deep need. And so the addictive pattern is one that's so close, so obvious, so pervasive that I've been completely blind to it. And imagine the whole complex of behaviors that build around this need to be seen, and all the different ways that I might give myself away in directions which are not appropriate for me, not helpful for me, not healthy for me, in order for that hit of recognition, right? I mean, my whole life is a pretty messy narrative built on that exact storyline. And that's tricky. And to look back on it now with that clarity is like, holy smokes, it's not comfortable, but it is helpful, because once you see these things, Richard Rudd talks about how awareness in and of itself is what allows these wounds to unwind. I always like that. So another example, addiction to being seen. Another example might be the addiction to fixing or helping others. Another really pernicious one. On the surface, it seems appropriate. It's good to want to help others, right? And yet you can see the dark side of my 2-5 profile, this like projecting of myself as a savior in cases where maybe it's not right for me to be. And this going out of my way to prove myself, even though I have a wide open heart center. All these different ways that the addictive need to be the one to save the world. Oh, that is my life story. Like I have so many stories I could share on that. So you can see how the true quality of addiction that plays out, at least in my experience, it has nothing to do with alcohol or drugs or some of these things that we know to look for. It was so far beneath the surface and so close at hand that I could not see it until my life deconstructed to such a great extent that there was no choice but to see it when I looked in the mirror. Does that make sense?
For sure. Yeah. And I feel like the root of everybody is, why did we come here? To have a relationship with others. It's like source gets to have to play in all these different people and bodies, and we get to have an experience with each other. And so why wouldn't you want to be seen and heard? We weren't meant to be stranded on a desert island. It's a very like natural need and want. And I feel that nobody needs to feel shame for that. And yes, I think that maybe we can go into like why maybe that was like your driving force, because maybe as a child you didn't get that attention or whatever, and so now when you did get the attention, there's something that happened in the brain that's like, ooh, dopamine, ooh, this feels good, ooh, how can I keep getting that, right? Because maybe too with your, I don't know, because I was looking at your chart and I was like, there's a lot going on in the mind. I mean, there's a lot consciously. And then we have your IQ is just 45.6. How does this play into the 24? And how is this saving you from the SQ and the EQ? Like why do we have this pattern playing out to kind of save you and protect you from the emotions and the body? Because that's all the mind kind of wants to do. And I feel too, like it's interesting that you're in all these, I mean, the only defined centers you have is your throat and your G, and you have the 24 here in an open center. And you were saying like it fires and then doesn't get all the way to the other side, and then it's like returning. Well, you're meant to transcend everything with the sixth line of the mind. It's like, of course you're going to need to return until you up level into those cyclical patterns of like spiral dynamics. It's like, let's keep going around in the circle until we finally up level. And it's like nothing that you need to know or be certain about, because it's all in open centers. It's kind of just epiphanizes in you when you have enough experience. And that's probably why your vocation is patience. That's just kind of what I'm gathering. But I mean, there's so many other things. I mean, we share the 42 as well, and we talked about the cyclical patterns. And I don't know, it's important. It's like, can you have patience to let these cycles continue, and then you like spiral up, into a new experience? I mean, is there anything you'd like to add, Bella? Thank you so much, Tim, for being vulnerable and sharing about addiction in your own way, because I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, addiction, alcohol, sex, drugs, yada yada, but the most addictive part of the human is the mind.
Yes.
So
yeah, the first thing I was thinking about is the completely open ego, because one thing is to want to be seen and recognized, and that might be a projector trait, but for me the value, the completely open ego is very innocent, and like all the completely open centers, they are very innocent, and it has to do with worthiness and value. So I believe that when this is combined with a projector aura, it's not just about being seen and recognized, it's about being valued, it's about being reflected in others as having a value, as being worthy. So that it's like it's kind of gets much deeper, because it's easy in this world to be seen. It's easy in this world to be recognized in a way. But like, what is that deep feeling of worthiness that you don't have a reference point for when you don't have anything in that center? So I would like, that's the first thing I would almost like to hear you speak a little bit about.
Well, I mean, I love it. That is so perceptive and so aligned with my experience. And it is a refinement on what I intend when I say that there has been this need to be seen. It's not just being seen. I could make a lot of noise and make myself seen, but what I am pointing at is precisely what you just mentioned, and that is much deeper. This isn't just. It's not just a hit. It's an identity level hit, right? It's like, am I invisible or do I have value? Does my existence matter? I mean, these are big questions, and they're questions I've always held. And they're the kind of questions that, when spoken in my younger years especially, people would look at me like I'm crazy. Like, dude, just like, you know, you're at work having a conversation with a coworker. It's like, just push the button and do the thing. You know, it's like, it's easy. And I'm like, no, it's got to be more. And so it's deep stuff. It's about purpose. It's about identity. What you said about innocence, huge, really huge. You know, anytime that you see this wide open heart center, boom, you have something to look at. And it's been perhaps the most useful area of learning in human design for me. Definitely up there, top 5, understanding what that means to have a completely open heart center. And then this is a bit more advanced, but when you're looking at the motivation variable in my below the line detail, you'll notice that I have this motivation of innocence too. And so, you know, if you know what to look for as you start to scan my chart, you recognize that there is a theme of innocence. But that very, very shadow of addiction is precisely what has held me apart from innocence. And here's how. Another thing I've been addicted to is perfection. Because if what I'm trying to do is to prove my value, I must at all times be perfect for everyone, right? So I can't disappoint anyone. And as a child, this played out fairly easily. You know, I knew what the parameters were. I was a straight A+ student, never got anything less than 100%. And if I did, I retook the test for my own benefit. You know, it had to be perfect. I had to have the most gold stars of everyone in the class. I was raised in a very conservative Christian setting, and so I memorized a lot of Bible verses, and I looked good because I knew how to. But what I was driven by was the need to please my parents and please my elders and all of these different things. And what that became as an adult was not only a driving force, but an addiction. I had to be perfect for my romantic partners and for my employers and for everyone in the world, right? And that's an impossible position, utterly impossible position to hold. And the way that that connected to the 45, Ashley, to your point, is that I became intellectually dominant. I became very, very clear on the precise image that others were allowed to receive of me. So anything that was even borderline imperfect, or could be apparently imperfect, to any set of eyes got buried, and anything that looked good was allowed to become a part of my brand. And so you ended up with this very refined aesthetic, which was, you know, it was a pretense, but I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know that I was showing people a false face. I thought I was helping, you know, I thought I was doing the right thing by being safe for others. And it's been a really tough lesson to learn. In fact, it's been my most recent lesson, this lesson that somehow by dropping the facade of perfection, that innocence begins to come to the surface, and that by trying so hard to be right for everyone, I was in fact disallowing anyone connection with the true heart of Tim. Wow, that's, I mean, I can feel it. Like I could just start crying right now because it's really deep stuff. And I'll draw one more connection if it's okay. I don't want to monologue the whole conversation.
No, keep going.
I just saw this before the call, so this is something brand new, and I'm excited to share it with you. When I looked at the 24 in my Pearl, it's a 5th line activation, And in human design, these lines have different names than in the gene keys. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read what this particular fifth line is called in human design, and we're going to track it back to what you've just highlighted here in the gene keys, okay? So I've got my little reference book here. I want to read it word for word. So the fifth line in the 24th gate of human designs, it's known as the line of confession. And the tagline that comes along with this is amazing to me. It says, the courage to admit the mistakes of the past. Wow, okay, so here's the lesson I'm learning: to be clear and open and not to hide myself in an attempt to appear perfect. So if I play out this particular energy in the pearl, and I allow myself to get honest enough and vulnerable enough to be true to my own experience, and I have the courage to be clear about my past, even the mistakes, then I gain access to what the line 5 here in the gene keys points to, which is power. And this is, like, as both of you know, I'm sure, this is a really ultimate power that plays out in this particular position of the gene keys profile. And to recognize how I've been holding myself apart from it for so long, and then to recognize how, with a minor shift in perspective and a fairly courageous choice on my part to continually offer myself in an innocent way, that on that level of purity, there is this deep grounded power and impact, because the 24 is all about the individual stream, which is all about impact. This is about how Tim shows up in the world. And I've been blind to it my entire life, despite looking so hard to find it for all this time. So I'll pause there. Big things happening here in the 24, huh?
Yeah. And you're turning 33, which is
32.
32.
Oh
yeah, we did have that conversation. We did have that. There's so much. I feel so much of that Jesus energy in you too. So it's I don't know. I guess that's just coming up for me. And the fact that your childhood was rooted in memorizing all these Bible verses and stuff, and innocence. There's just something about you that just comes up, and it's like, oh, of course, confession, like. Let's bring that up too, But I mean, with the fifth line, why wouldn't that be part of like the vulnerability aspect? Like, yeah, let's confess that I'm not who you think I am. And I put up this facade because I'm very sensitive to knowing who you want me to be and what I think that you need me to be. And that's going to also bring up my self-worth too, because I'm meeting your needs for who you want me to be, especially as a projector being a guide for everyone. It's like, you can't mess up. You're the one that's guiding people, So there's a lot on the line, I guess. So I understand what you're saying with the connections that you've made here. So I'm interested to see what more unfolds, because this is like day 1 of the transit.
Yeah. So. Wow. Good point. And the 2-5 projection field. I mean, here's the double projection field. I mean, I've learned. Oh, and an undefined solar plexus. I mean, I've really learned how to walk the minefield and how to shapeshift and to become everything for everyone. And it's been at my own expense. And ultimately, the very people that I was hoping to serve through doing so, they got a plastic version of Tim. That's not fair. I didn't know. I was doing my best. So there's no blame, but I'll do differently moving forward. That much I can say for sure.
It's interesting to recognize yourself, because I have a completely open ego, completely open solar plexus. So I recognize a lot of things of what you say. I also have a 6-line IQ, so that makes me very prone to perfection, and that could also be my prison, I guess, for the rest of my life. And I'm also thinking, it's interesting, Ashley, because we have that 45.6 coming up in our readings. I think your son has it also in his life's work or something. We have that 45.6 coming up. You have it in your IQ. Last year, that was my progressed sun in my chart. And I've had somebody in my life who has that 45.6 in life's work, in IQ, and in relating in Mercury. And the 24 2 is the SQ, and a 5th line core, so guilt. So I'm wondering, like, I'm kind of seeing the story of having guilt as your core wound, having that 24.2, whether it's in the heart, like you were saying about how it is to have in your life's work, but I'm wondering, what is it to have it in your core? You said something, be true. You said be true to who you are or something, but what is it to be true to your heart? And then how does guilt play into all this, to those patterns and trying to be perfect, and then coming in and realizing that you're not perfect, and then like what is the loop that creates when you realize that you're not innocent in the world and that people actually can see through you? Like, what is the loop, or what is the potential breakthrough with that fifth line core wound that you come into, thanks to understanding it also with the 45-6?
Wow. So you are both just amazing. These are really good questions. These are really, really good questions. Okay. So amazingly, there's response bubbling to the surface. I say amazingly because I could never have prepared for these kind of questions. So I think I get to learn through even responding to them. It's incredible to me that you made the link with that fifth line core wound. It's extremely primary here. It plays into this in a very big way, that theme of guilt. In fact, when I was, guilt, shame, and blame, there's this like nest, they feel very similar, and there are, nuanced differences between them, but it's a bit of a vortex, right? And so when I was looking at the individual stream in particular, which the 24 lives on, during my contemplation for development of the body keys, which I don't want to go too far into that direction right now, but we'll get there. What I found was that the individual stream has this flip side of a coin playing out, a coin, where the dark side, its dark theme is blame, and its bright side is impact. Okay. And so blame for me has been really, really huge. And guilt is the same kind of energy in my experience of it. So the way that this has showed up for me is that I'm looking at my past experiences and I'm feeling that some of them are not supposed to see the light, that others aren't supposed to be aware of them. And so because I feel guilty, because I blame myself for them, I bury them. I don't allow them to establish themselves as like lessons. They're never given the chance to become the soil for something beautiful, because it's like, oh no, is what happens first. And so they get buried. But those dead that I've buried walk, and that's what you just indicated. Like, other people see, like, well, Tim's a nice guy, but man, are there a lot of zombies behind him? And that's strange, like, what's the deal with that? It's true though, and I didn't know that. Again, this particular lesson, you guys are really hitting me hard here. It's like this particular lesson is a couple of weeks old. I did not know that I was burying things like this, but I was. And so what happens if I don't allow every decision that I make in life to be motivated from guilt and this need to be perfect? Well, I guess what happens is that I become a lot more gentle with myself, and I allow some of those demons that I've been running from a little bit of extra space for forgiveness. And if that forgiveness happens, then I'm shining light in dark corners of my heart, which have simply never seen the light of day before. I haven't looked into those corners, let alone anyone else, And so in doing this, things begin to shift. And that dark web of guilt and self-blame, which has kept me hidden from the world, because that's what it is. If I feel guilty about something, or if I'm blaming myself about something, I'm going to hide. I'm going to put up a wall, and I'm not going to allow you to see this because it's dirty or it's scary or it's unsafe. But if I'm allowed to shine a light on it, if I'm allowed to forgive it and recognize that it was in the past, and even that it serves a purpose for who I am now, and that the fullness of who Tim is and could be is in fact rooted in his whole story, not just the pretty parts. Oh my word, what does that open up? It opens the heart. It opens the heart, and there's the gift of precision. And so here we're starting to draw the spine, which you referred to earlier, from the purpose at the bottom to the life's work at the top. And here in the attraction sphere is this gift of precision. I used to think that I was being precise by preparing this perfect image for others, when in fact I was dominating the image that others see, and I was playing out that shadow of the 45th energy in the IQ. The true gift of precision is an opening of the heart that allows for the truth of the heart to speak clearly without editing. It's not a carefully refined image. It's the true image. It is innocence. And so there's how the heart opens as forgiveness begins to soften all of those hard edges and shine a light in corners that I personally didn't even know existed until very recently. Is that a fair response to your question?
Yeah, and it makes me feel like you are doing, I don't know why you're doing this, but you're doing the pathway of individuation from the up down instead of from the down up. And that's so much more complicated. It would be so much easier to be grounded in your remembering and then walk up step by step. But it's almost like you had to be in the 24 and in the nightmare of the 24 for a long time, and in the dishonor of it, and crawling, in the underworld or in the wherever it is, and then suddenly you realize, your heart opens and you realize what true precision is. And then like the penny in the 24 kind of drops down and the inside gets into the 33.5. This is why I'm here. This is who I am. This is what I remember. This is the power that I'm grounded in. Like, that's what I see in your pathway of individuation.
Some people have to fall down here to get there. And some people have to see, okay, locked door. And then finally, when they get here, they can come back down, But if he's in this repetitive loop, like can't fire over, then he's not going to go down into core stability. But he is moving there, and he is consciously going there with the body keys. It's just the way that he was doing it here is like, okay, let's look here because we started here. So how do we get down here? And then, oh, what unlocks here? The higher expression of this, because we're coming into that mindfulness. And he's taking us through this confessional of like, here, I'm observing myself, and this is what I'm going to share with you. I'm sharing my mindfulness with you. Come inside. You're the cross of the four ways, right? So like, come inside my room, and I'm going to like bear it all to you. Like you get to come into my locked room and see what's up. Right, Tim?
Yes. Yeah. And what you're both saying here, what you're both kind of sharing is really amazing for me to hear from the outside in, because it's pretty spot on. And I don't think it would be this way for everyone. And I think it's the 24th energy that is a part of what has required this, because as you indicated, it's been a trap, and it's been a really, really, really tough one. And I remember like the first sentence of reading about it in the Gene Keys, Richard Rudd talks about how this particular energy is not an individual expression, that the whole world is kind of like stuck in this same energy, that we're all experiencing it to some degree. I think I have had a very special opportunity in my particular experience with it, because I have been really locked up in this way. Another reason that it's kind of dropping from the top down, it is surprising to hear that, and it is true, is because the energies that I experience in my radiance and purpose spheres are ones that I am powerfully connected to positively. So they're a part of the bright essence that I feel comfortable showing. It's in these more mental areas. And think about this too, anytime that we're dealing on the body side of the design activations, there's a certain stability that lives there that simply doesn't play out as beautifully on the mind side. So when we're looking at the life's work and the evolution, these energies tend to be significantly more unstable, significantly more challenging to see. And so I find that I have spent a lot of time kind of shining the light of my mindfulness and sensitivity, but only to the extent that it feels safe for me to do so, right? And so there's the full like other side of the profile, which has been very carefully hidden, or I've spun a different story about it. I've been really good at telling it in a way that others can receive. So I think what's happening is that a lot of the carefulness that I've lived inside of for a long time is starting to drop away. And what it's showing is not a lack of care, quite the opposite. It's actually showing innocence. What a surprise, that behind all of those things I was hiding all that time is not this unsafe character who, has no control of his inner processes and can't possibly be, a beneficial influence to the world outside of him, but rather someone who is bright and playful and childlike and curious and all of these beautiful things, innocent like a child and capable of accessing life in a way that others simply aren't. And so here's the flip side to the 24. We spent a lot of time looking at the dark side, and I really want everyone listening to know that this isn't the end of the story for the 24, because that same process that can trap you in the dark loops is the same process that allows you to taste life in a way that others may never be able to. That same repeating over and over again, for me, something as simple as a sunrise or a bird flying by, takes on a powerful relevance as it stays with me. The smell of a room stays with me. And these simple nuances of experience drop into me in a way that's different because of that same repetitive process. And now an experience takes on deeper relevance, or a question leads me to something. And now we're in the contemplative process of letting something small become large and take on value. So I don't know if that makes sense, but for me, that's been a great part of that gifted expression of the 24.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely. With the 33 and the 24 coming together, it's like, here's your being and here's your doing. And it's like, if this keeps returning and returning, and then your mind, and then you never forget. And if you can hold on to the things that are beautiful and wondrous and keep you in that childlike innocence, that is the state you continually come in. And it's only about rewiring your brain, yes. Right? And this study's like epigenetics. We aren't a victim of any of this stuff. It just takes more gratitude, and like paving the new pathways so that when your brain does return, it always is returning to innocence.
Yes. In fact, it's really exciting for me to see this, because when I built this system known as Whole System Human, and I haven't really been operating in that world for a little while now, but the whole system was built on 3 pillars. One of those 3 pillars was known as wayfinding, and wayfinding was all about orienting our mental processes in alignment with those things which beautify us. And so my experience of this 24, as it's become more and more a part of who I am in a beneficial way, is that those patterns allow for beautiful things to blossom. And there's that connection that you just described between the 24 and the 33. It allows something simple, something apparently mundane, to blossom into something poetic and meaningful and beautiful, something that invites me deeper into the heart and soul of life, rather than constantly forcing me into hiding.
Yeah, I was observing 2 things. When we were saying, the 24 is not just this dark loop in the mind, looking at the programming partner, I'm just feeling that the 44 and the right soul fractal is really what can also help the 24, because I have the 44 and it's quite prominent. So when I'm not in the right soul fractal, even though I don't have the 24, it happens to me because I don't feel grounded with my soul fractal. So that's also probably a way for you that as a second line evolution in life's work, when you are disappointed in relationships, which is that shadow, that is when you're not going to be able to feel like you have found your soul fractal. And then the whole shadow side of both the life's work and evolution are going to kind of pull you. But it's also the good side of it. When you find your soul fractal, then you are going to be able to share those gaps of awareness and those quantum leaps. And then your whole soul fractal gets that, because you're doing it for the fractal. You're not just doing it for you.
Yes. I've thought a lot about this too. And I was kind of hoping that we'd be able to touch on the programming partners and the feedback loop that's generated between them, because I can say for sure that my addictive tendencies to prepare an image and then move into, savior mode in hopes of being seen. And there you can see how all these addictive patterns kind of come together into one story. That very movement has activated and sustained the shadow of interference that you see in the 44. And so despite my best efforts and truly good intentions, I've found myself repeating patterns in relationships which have not served myself or the other. And that's been really frustrating when you move into something with the best of intentions and find yourself butting against the same wall over and over again, story after story, year after year. That is deeply demoralizing. And it's depletive. That's something really useful to recognize here, is that when we're on the shadow level in any gene key, we find that the energy of that thing saps the life out of us. It depletes our energy reserves, and we find ourselves exhausted. And as a projector, I find myself embittered, right? And generators might find themselves deeply frustrated, and so on. Those shadow expressions are always depletive, and yet the potential of that gift it's really, really powerful. And the moment that you move into that feedback loop, it also feeds back. And Ashley, that's what you were describing, that this can be cultivated. And after a certain period of time, my belief, both because I am a romantic idealist and also through experience, my belief has come to be that when we access those layers, we are able to begin to self-generate a new quality of life and energy, right? And so they self-perpetuate too, just like the shadows did. And now instead of self-perpetuating to depletion, they self-perpetuate in a way that generates more life, more energy, more flow, more abundance, more beauty. On and on it goes. Ooh, yummy. That was good. I got chills from that one, actually. Yeah. So that gift of invention and how it can call in the right team, the right people. You're talking about the fractal, the soul fractal. Man, I can only begin to imagine at this point, since in so many ways, even after all these years, I'm at the start of the journey here. I can only begin to imagine what happens as I open this heart of innocence and allow myself to shine in a way that is not grasping for anything, that is not pretending anything, that's truly innocent and open. It's going to be a different quality of relationship that shows up. It may not even be that the type of people change, but the quality of connection between them will.
Yeah.
I've definitely experienced a very different relationship, because you have 44 in your Pluto as well. I have 44 in my Pluto. Bella has 44 in her culture sphere. And I feel like in the relationships that I've experienced first with Bella and then Bella bringing in Simone and you, I've experienced such a richer, more fulfilling relationship in our interactions together. And it's just so awesome to see how it's progressed for me with all of my other relationships. Not to say they were bad, because everything is for us. That's how we need to look at the 44 is, it's a biofeedback loop. And these are our relationships, and they're for us, and they're for our evolution. And there can be I don't know, everybody has a different way of looking at their relationships. And I feel like all of them are perfect, exactly for us. And I wanted to illuminate this in your chart, because I love making the connection when we say something and seeing it in the chart. You had said one of your addictive tendencies is to be the savior, right? And I was looking for, I feel like that's the warrior likes to fight for a cause. Like, it's like, I want to fight. I'm going to fight for this, right? And I see that your Neptune has the warrior archetype there. And then we have the Pluto with your relationships. And if you're wanting to empower yourself to not feel rejected, you have the four here. It's like you're afraid that you're soul fractal, and if you finally meet them, they won't like you or want you, right? And then you don't get that value or recognition from them. So your deepest fear would be like, holy crap, they might reject me. So I need to come in and show myself as I'm needed, I'm valuable, I will save you. And in me saving you, I'm going to empower myself, and I'm going to feel good, right? Yeah. Because of that first line. So it's Neptune always veils the transformation that could happen in Pluto, instead of just being like, I am empowered, I am self-assured, and I come to you like open-hearted with that fourth line too, instead of feeling like, oh, I'm going to be rejected. Like, no, of course I'm not going to be rejected. These are my people, right? So it's just interesting to see the loop that could happen here. I also have the 58 with the 44 as well. So we can see how the gratitude of it, that doesn't come into place. We don't recognize like having gratitude for ourselves and having gratitude for the other people coming, even if the relationship and experience isn't that great, because we can all attest to different relationships where they weren't great experiences. But I'm really grateful of the experience that I'm having with you, Simone and Bella, because it's unfolding in a different way for me. So I just wanted to illuminate that, since you did mention the savior element, and I'm sure we can find it other places in the chart, but I definitely wanted to mention that. Does that resonate, or am I kind of off base?
No, it's spot on. It's amazing to me that we share so many similarities in our design, and that you can speak to that from your own experience too. What came up for me was the difference between the simplicity of the heart's movement and the complexity of the mind. I mean, just think about how complicated it has been for me to cater perfection to each individual relationship in my life. I mean, even just hearing about it as a theoretical, it's exhausting, and it has been exhausting. And to continually fail because, again, we're going to deplete ourselves in that direction. Here you have the shadow of intellect in my attraction sphere and the shadow of dominance in that 45, all of these different ways that it's played out. And what you're describing is the potential to, rather than very carefully structuring an image, releasing myself to this space of trust that life is generous and that I don't have to fight and scrap for, the smallest bits of recognition, that I can relax into who I am and what my heart opens toward in a way that allows life to happen through me instead of constantly having my dukes up just in case, and there has been a deep fear of rejection. That's where the guilt comes from. It's like, if ever anyone saw fill in the blank, then they would absolutely reject me. That's the feeling, and there's a self-blame too. Blame is all about policing ourselves. Guilt is the same way. And maybe this is the difference between shame and guilt. Shame is very much about what another person might perceive of you. Guilt is one step further than that, in that guilt is all about identity. It's not, I did the wrong thing. It is that I am wrong, right? Guilt actually affects you on an identity level and assumes the worst. So really deep stuff here. There's, I look at my chart sometime and I think, if there was some part of me that prior to life, kind of constructed or architected this experience so that I could learn the greatest lessons, I'm gonna smack that dude upside the head when I get back there, like that. I really set myself up for a toughie on this round. But it's also very beautiful. And so I thought maybe if we have some time to look at the brighter side of all this, I think it might be useful. We've already talked a little bit about how the repetitive loops can be useful. And so there's kind of the human design expression. But I want to say for anyone listening to this that the gift of invention is not perfectly clear. I hear you.
I want to say something about the bright side before we end.
Okay, yeah, please. Please jump right in.
I just want to say that I have something to say about the bright side.
Okay, good. Because it's important that we always illuminate the potential here. We're never far from the potential, right? Never far. It's always this slightest shift. But seeing into that potential is where the real work is. We're blinded by the way we've always done things, and especially here in the 24. There seems to be no way out. We're victims to these patterns. And then boom, there's this shaft of light that implies the potential of something different. And all of a sudden, life begins to change. So what is the gift of invention? I can tell you about how it's played out for me, except I think that it plays out differently for everyone. So the gift of invention fully relies upon the city of silence, okay? And this silence is, it is not silence only. It's actually the great silence that pervades all of life. So silence is not actually always quiet. It's this deep space, the feminine void, right? And so the way that it has played out for me is in creativity. And anytime we find ourselves in any gate on the individual stream, we're not only dealing with impact, we're not only dealing with the things we've discussed, we're dealing with creativity. And not creativity only, but true originality. This isn't the creativity of the collective streams. This isn't the creativity that takes almost like a collage, bits and pieces of what's available and then makes something beautiful of them. This is the kind of creativity, the kind of true originality that brings something to life that has never before existed. And in order to access that, in order to truly invent something, right? Invention is about bringing something incomprehensible to life, right? And so in order to access that, we have to allow for the space of deepening into silence. And so an example of this for me was when I used to write poetry. And I used to write all the time, every day, morning and night. And what I would do is I would open my computer in front of me and I would just become quiet in front of a white screen, just a blank sheet of paper. And I would never know what was going to come up. I would not know what it was going to be about. And there was never a promise that anything would come up. I just knew that if I sat still and became quiet enough for long enough, some words might start to show up on the screen. And that isn't to remove myself from the process. Not at all. It was quite the opposite. I was so immersed, so absorbed in the process of creation that it wasn't until after I had crafted something that I kind of would take a breath, shake it off, and look at it again and say, whoa, something happened there, or not, right? Same with music. When I used to write music, those songs, they came from somewhere else, and there's no other way to say that. And it took time. You know, invention isn't necessarily spontaneous, perhaps for some, but for me, it was about like swimming in these possibilities. And when it was writing, it was like, you know, a sentence could be stated in any number of ways, and maybe I'd type it out and I'd look at it and it wouldn't be quite right, and so I'd recraft. And so what that leads me to believe is that whatever happens here in the creative process of the 24 and individuality in general is not something intellectual, but something feeling based. Because although I was using my mind to put one word next to another, what told me about whether or not the words were correct was a feeling. And so I would write and rewrite and rewrite, and I would read and reread and reread until what I was looking at felt settled in me, and I could feel it drop like an anchor. And then there was that sigh of relief, and everything inside says, you did it, right? This is what invention looks like. Tesla played the same thing out. He would build and build and build something in his mind, Nikola Tesla. And he would see it, and he would see it in every possible way and dimension and from every angle, and he would work it in his mind until it worked in his mind, and then he would build it in reality. This is what I see in the gift of invention.
Yeah, I love what you just did, because you brought back the 24 to actually the feeling of it being a Taurus gate, because it is a Taurus gate, and it is all about feeling, and like when it's, you know, it feels right to you, and it is about poetry. So I feel like you brought it back to that truth of what it is grounded in astrologically as well.
Yes.
And I feel when I look at your chart, and this is what I kind of wanted to bring in, because this is the perfection I see, and what we kind of maybe forgot about in the beginning. But when I know the system that you have invented, which is the body keys, and I see the brilliance of that system, when I look at your gene keys, I mean, first of all, we can look at in the chart that is up right now. You have the channel from the throat to the G center, which is your only channel. 1333. So when we go and we look at the gene keys, we suddenly see that when we go down to what we're saying, the design side and the design earth, that purpose of yours is the 33, which is part of that channel that is always consistent in you, you could say, because it is on that red side, and it's also in a defined center. And what I feel when I understand, or when I hear you speak about the body keys, I feel like you have listened and you have gone over it, you know, the listening in the EQ, that you've listened not only with your mind, but you've taken in that in a natural way, as the 13.2 does. So you've listened and listened and listened, and you've listened to charts, and you've looked at the circuitry, and you know, that's naturally what you do. And you don't do it just from the mind. You don't actually do it from the 24. You do it from the place that is more grounded in you and that is even more spacious. And from that channel that is always consistent in you, you could say the 13, the 33, where you are grounded in your body, where you are grounded in the vibratory states of things. It's through that filter, or through that, not filter even, through that vessel that invention have come through. So through that listening, through the grounding, through that remembering, is how your invention now for the world, your brilliance is being shared. And I just feel like this is also when we see in a chart that if there's one theme, one channel that is activated, and there is also your purpose, that has to show up in what you're inventing and creating for the world.
Wow, that's really exciting to see. Yeah, I've never seen it that way before, but it makes a lot of sense to me.
And it's also that 62 in there, because there is such a precision. There's such, like we were saying with the poetry, there's such cleanliness of the words. It's not too many words. It's that precision. It's 62 in line 1. That's how the body keys feels. And I think even Ashley had that feeling in the beginning when she got hers. It's like, this is too simple. I've read through it. But then it's like, that's the same thing with the 24. You have to go over it before the penny drops. That's the beauty of it. So it's even like inherently has the geometry of the 24 in it, and it asks people to wait until that gap of awareness comes. When it drops down into the body, remember, wow, this is the genius of this vehicle. That's how the body keys work. So it goes from the dropping of the penny down into the knowing in the body.
Wow, that's exciting. Even like you basically just read my chart in a way that I have never done, which maybe isn't saying much. I don't know if this is common for projectors, but I spend the least amount of time with my chart. So to come back into it in this way for a conversation like this is really, it's illuminating. Something you said, Bella, connected another dot for me, which is the difference between creating something like, for instance, a self-image from the motivation of fear of what other people might think, for instance. So there's a motivation of fear and the creative process that kind of arises from that, as opposed to this feeling space where we're creating by feeling forward into like where this deeper, much more spacious and quieter inner space is leading us to. And so, yes, that's the life of the heart. It's the field of listening, and it is absolutely that Siddhic space of silence. So you start to see how they all kind of wrap up. And I have seen the difference in quality when I can create from that space. And to such a great extent, what I've done in the way that I've kind of, I guess, completely recrafted my whole way of being in life right now is that I'm trying to understand what it means to live completely from that space. Even, my business and my professional world, everything's coming into this much quieter, much slower space, trusting forward and feeling for the authentic impulse rather than creating all the things that I know to be right. I did that for a long time, and you can make a lot of money following those strategies. But again, the simplicity of the heart has a completely different value to it than the complicated life of the intellect. And though I'm extremely effective in the intellect, it was never satisfying to me. I never even close to touched the feeling of contentment in that world. There was no fulfillment even after I had achieved everything I had aimed for. And so what we're dealing with here is a deep space. It is the underworld. One of you said the soul in the underworld. You spoke to that journey previously, early on in this conversation. That's exactly what's happening here. It is a space I've never occupied before. It's completely alien, and it is terrifying, and it is exhausting sometimes. But what I'm touching are layers of myself that I didn't even know existed a week ago, let alone a year ago, and so on.
I wanted to show, maybe as a kind of last thing, what Monica said. Precision is how the body keys presentation looks. I love the look of the documents. Simplicity.
Oh, wow. I'm seeing that now. Thank you, Monica. That's amazing.
And we'll probably, we've been on for about an hour already, so I want to give the body keys its rightful amount of time, and I don't think we'll be able to go into it today, but we're definitely doing a follow-up conversation where we are going to talk to Tim about his invention, his creation, what he has created through his vessel, right? And it's amazing. So we are going to go into that. And I know that we've been saying it a couple times and not really expanding upon it. You're like, what's the body keys? Monica knows. I know. Bella knows. You will know soon.
Wow, that's dirty. Like, we all know. You'll know eventually.
But you don't. So you have to tune in. Is that my fifth line manipulating?
That's beautiful. Thank you for saying all of that too.
Awesome. Well, is there anything else that you would maybe want to share with the audience or with us or anything, Tim?
Sure. I'll give one little key as to how to address the darker side of this 24 energy for those of you who are like me and experience that. Instead of medication, I would encourage you. Well, I'm not a doctor, so I can't tell anyone to come off of any medication that you've been, encouraged to use. But I can tell you that there is at least the possibility for something more beautiful, more sustainable, and less addictive than medication. And a really useful trick for this particular energy is music. So that space of silence is actually the soundscape of the acoustic field. So music helps to soothe that vortex of repetitive thinking or any kind of OCD tendencies, finding ways to create good feeling soundscape for yourself, whether it's your favorite song or sounds of nature or whatever it may be. It could be complete silence, putting earplugs in, but playing with that frequency band of the acoustic gradient, that will be a key. As a little gift at the end here.
Thank you so much. And that's super easy for people to play with and go into. My son has 24 in his Pearl as well, and we're already seeing those addictive tendencies coming up, and we're like, oh, let's put him in guitar or piano. And I think we need to play a little bit more with the music, because he doesn't even see what's happening. And he's like 8. I'm like, oh man, my child. But thank you for giving that, if not just for me, for everybody else too, whoever receives it. So thanks again, Tim, for coming on with us, and Bella for helping me co-facilitate this interview. And I did post the link for Archetype 24 on the 64 doors, so you can go and check that out. Tim's on there. This interview's on there. You can rewatch it there if you came in towards the end. Some of you probably haven't seen the beginning part, so if you'd like to go do that, you can rewatch it on YouTube or on our page. And there's a lot more information that you can sink your teeth into about the 24, about the Inventor archetype, if you do go on the 64 doors, which Tim is helping us with. He is partnering with us and helping us create it. And it's an amazing journey just for us on the back end, and then to give it to you on the front end to have you experience it. So I hope that you are appreciating it and utilizing it. Yeah. Anything else that you want to add, Bella? No? Tim? Good?
We're good. Thank you both for this, and thank you everyone for listening.
Yes, thank you. Have a good day.
Bye.